Good afternoon, and welcome to another Marine Log exclusive webinar. My name is Heather Irvin. I'm the editor-in-chief of Marine Log, and during this live webinar, we will examine real-world examples of how marine tech companies have successfully implemented sustainability into their practice, and why that's important more than simply going green. Stay tuned as we dive into this topic with guests Dr. Daniel Chatterjee, Director of Technology Management and Regulatory Affairs for Rolls-Royce, Drew Orvieto, Senior Director of Product for Sea Machines Robotics, and John Donovan, Vice President of Operations for FuelTrax. During today's discussion, you will learn what greener options are available when designing or retrofitting a new vessel, where our panelists see green technology evolving in the near future, and more. If you have a question during this webinar, please submit it at any time using the Ask a Question box on the left side of the screen. We look forward to hearing from our audience toward the end of today's presentation. Now let's jump in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. To get us started, can you tell us a bit about your company's products or solutions? And we'll go ahead and start with you, John.
Hi, Heather. So at FuelTrax, we advocate for and provide a precision sensor-based method of vessel performance monitoring and optimization. We believe that analytics platforms are only as good as the data that feeds them. And we really focus on providing stable and accurate remote monitoring of fuel consumption through best-in-class sensing. There's no room in our system for manual data entry or collection from an unverified or a non-audited sensor. We've been in business since 2006. We have over 730 systems installed globally. We do have a high concentration in upstream and offshore energy. And that's important to note because as the deep sea sector is coming around to vessel monitoring, the upstream sector, offshore supply vessels, platform supply vessels, for them, it's been the norm for some time now. And that's a world we know really well. We're delivering precise fuel consumption figures to vessel owners and charters in real time. And that's with, again, a fully automated and auditable trail. This allows our clients to go from the ESG board or the regulator or decision makers in the boardroom all the way down to the individual consumer onboarded a vessel. And again, there's no opportunity in between for human data entry or the onboarding of bad or corrupted data. So that provides that end-to-end full picture of a vessel's fuel consumption and emissions profile in real time. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. Thanks for having me.
Great, John. Thank you so much. Dr. Chatterjee, how about you?
Yeah, so warm welcome from my side. So Rolls-Royce is providing energy and power for everything which is not on the road. So we are starting from aviation turbines up to maritime propulsion systems, decentralized energy, power for blade mining trucks. And I would say the focus today is marine. So we are providing engines, complete propulsion systems, including automation for a vast variety of applications, ranging from fast ferries, yachts, commercial ships, tugs. And I would say our core portfolio really when it comes to reliability, performance, and also, and that's the big topic today, environmental friendliness. So this is an increasingly topic, how to get shipping, I would say, more environmentally and climate friendly. I think all the technologies from the propulsion system automation will play a vital role there. And I think more interesting in our view is that we will go more and more in an ecosystem. So if you think what energy comes if the ship is in the harbor, so onshore power, all those things, and that's for us. So we'll say it's a golden age of engineering if you're an engineer, because it's really exciting what technology is out there to support this. And I think it's important to think on power generation on site. How can this help to get shipping when the ship is now more climate friendly? How can you use technologies like batteries, which are very well known for passenger cars into maritime? And that's also the journey we've taken to really expand our portfolio from the pure engines. We can buy now batteries from our side. We work on fuel cells, and we'll hear more on that to complete new areas of propulsion technology.
Thank you. And Drew, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I'm here representing Sea Machines Robotics. We're an investor-backed startup based in Boston, Massachusetts, also with facility in Hamburg, Germany. So we're a global presence and a global leader in the development of marine autonomy and perception products. We currently have 2 on the market, one focused more around remote operation of vessels, and the other is really a truly autonomous command and control system. Both of those products are commercially approved by classification societies, as well as deeply integrated into some of our customers' daily operations for sustainability and efficiency. We're a group of about 40 passionate folks, several of which are actually professional mariners. So we bring not only deep expertise on the technology side, but also around the marine industry and the applications of the vessels themselves. I hope you take away from today that sustainability is really at the heart of everything we do. So we're looking forward to diving in with you and the panelists today.
Great, thank you all. Drew, I'm going to go ahead and continue with you real quick. How does automation make miles travel more efficient on waters?
Yeah, it's a good question. Many people are trying to figure out this automation autonomy topic and see how does it fit into their operation and some of the broader goals that we know we need to achieve as a species on planet Earth and make our entire operations more efficient on the water. And our goal at Sea Machines is to make those vessel operations first and foremost safer, and secondly, more efficient. Our tools for doing that is really the autonomous technology and the connectivity around it. So I'm sure John in particular can probably speak to some of this. But picture a vessel underway with a system constantly collecting critical information about how the vessel's operating. So engine speed, vessel speed, the motions as a result of the sea conditions, things like that. An autonomy system is then processing that data in real time, constantly making micro adjustments in a way a human captain simply wouldn't or couldn't, and adjusting these operational parameters like the throttle, perhaps the boost pressure in the engine, the course of the vessel, always looking to optimize for efficiency. And while it's doing this, it's also dynamically avoiding any collisions. So it's also managing the safety of the vessel using a multitude of onboard sensors. So this is a good picture of kind of the direction that we at Sea Machines and the industry at large is going. This is especially applicable to more repetitive operations. So if you think about things like survey operations, ferry routes, any sort of passenger carrying, even cargo shipping, these applications are generally more predictable and in a more known environment. So they lend themselves more to those optimization and efficiency gains that I'm speaking about. That's how we see automation making these miles travel more efficient on the water. That's really one of our keystones of what we're doing at Sea Machines.
Okay. And Drew, as many of us know, safety is a large benefit of autonomy. We know accidents and collisions in the water create significantly hard to the environment. Talk to me a little bit about the connection there, and what can you speak to from your company's solutions from this?
Yeah, if we look back through the history of just the industry in general, there's been a number of vessel accidents, as you mentioned, and many come to mind right away. Exxon Valdez, for one, where you have groundings, collisions, and there's these huge environmental impacts that are felt long after the event itself. These are just catastrophic, and we want to do everything we can to avoid that. So what we're doing in developing autonomous technology is, again, to improve the safety and the predictability of the vessel operations to make sure these incidents never happen in the future. So we do a number of things. We really try to do our homework, studying accident reports, speaking with, again, our expert mariners on staff, with our customers, to really further our understanding of what can go wrong and build in safeguards into the technology to prevent those issues. So understanding best practices and again, finding the root cause of some of these incidents in the past helps us design products and technology in a way that prevents these accidents from ever happening. We also have, I think, an interesting sort of holistic approach. We're currently engaged in a bunch of projects right now with operators like oil spill response vessels, where we're actively supporting existing environmental cleanup efforts. So really, when we think about sustainability, we try to cut it off at the source, but if indeed something does happen, we also want our technology to enable the response to that. So whether that's first responder vessels like fireboats, or again, things like oil spill response and survey, we try to take that holistic sort of cradle to grave approach with safety.
Excellent. On a related note, Daniel, are there lessons to be learned from Tesla fails with people getting too comfortable too soon with all of this assistive technology? Are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, so I've been working 7 years for Daimler, so still having kind of connection to the automotive industry. So I think there are two things. The one thing is, I'm just referring what the newspaper. So I think it's a bit being realistic what a system can do. And if you compare what maybe other companies have said on level of autonomy, I would say they're maybe more realistic. So I will not everybody can think about what Tesla has done, but I think it was not realistic what they have promised. On the other hand, I think if you look for the maritime, so that's one lesson. And at the end, if you look on most incidents, really the driver has taken out of himself out of control of the car. And I think if we go to marine is a much more regulated environment. And so we heard from Drew that their system is classified and all that. So I think that's one difference. And when we talk on autonomy or on assistance systems, we have always the crew in there. So there's a professional trained crew there, and they're able to handle things if things go wrong. So we don't take them out. And I think that's really an important difference. And I think that they're professionals and therefore they will handle this differently. So realistically, and at what we are talking at the moment, the crew is still there. And so we should careful go to the next ways. And what we do, for example, as Rolls-Royce, we really take our lessons learned and the processes we know from aviation. Because in aviation, you have already that one. You have a professional pilot, and you have a lot of assistance systems. Mm-hmm. And this is, again, also a very safety, I would say, regulated area. And so that's how we do try to product safety process and everything taken from them. So as said, we need to be careful, need to be realistic. But on the other hand, I think the good thing is we are talking to a professional crew who can handle things if something goes wrong. And that, I think, is what makes a difference.
Absolutely. Drew, did you have something to add to that?
I did. Yeah, I think Daniel illustrated extremely well about the Tesla example, that the issue is not so much with the technology, but in the expectation management. And this is something really applies to our industry, where in the regulatory sphere, the technology is really outpacing the regulation. So the IMO has 4 levels for automation. Lloyd says there's 6. ABS says there's 5. And there's no real consistency to how we adjudicate what a system is really capable of. So we're just now starting to harmonize those sorts of efforts, and something we're trying to support groups like foresee, for example, in lobbying the IMO for more consistent, harmonious legislation. Because I think in the case of Tesla, if you advertise the system as really a level 2 or 3 system, perhaps it's not as sexy, but probably people don't, spend so much time taking a nap or on their phones because the expectations are more appropriately managed. So I think that's a lesson we can take into the maritime space.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give our audience a quick reminder that if you have any questions for our presenters, please submit them now or at any time during this broadcast using the Ask a Question box, and that's on the left-hand side of your screen there. So please do that as soon as you think of a question for John, Daniel, or Drew. All right, John, your turn. So last year, amid an unprecedented uptick in e-commerce, global businesses mobilized, I think it was more than 5,400 container ships across the world's oceans. The deadweight tonnage likely exceeded a staggering 2 billion. This scale demonstrates the degree to which the maritime industry is shouldering the burden of global supply chains. So congestion at ports is a major talking point right now. We hear it all the time. We write about it all the time on my end. How can your technologies help with this major issue?
That's a great question. So one of the ways that we can assist with this is by quantifying the impact of port congestion through precision monitoring. When vessels stack up outside West Coast ports, which is as we all know, is an environmental compliance zone, there's a corresponding footprint associated with that. And so just like everything else FuelTrax does, we provide decision makers with accurate and real-time information regarding the true carbon emissions of their operations in a particular moment in time. And so in the case of port congestion, Well, we can't directly solve that problem at Fuel Tracks. What we can do is provide the ground truth to what the cost is to the environment in the increased idling emissions cost to have such a high number of vessels stacked up in such a small concentrated area over an extended period of time. It's something we looked at in earlier this year, particularly with the port congestion off of Long Beach. Some of those vessels were Fuel Tracks equipped, and we were able to actually quantify the impacts to the environment from the difficult situation going on ashore.
Okay, Daniel, Rolls-Royce has also gotten UK government funding to research capturing carbon from the air. Is that part of research, or is that part of research that's going on into developing jet engines that can burn fuels based on captured carbon? Is that
that's the idea? So if you really think on fully getting climate neutral maritime shipping, so I mean, we would need really technology, or at the end fuels and new fuels and fuel conversion, which are CO2 neutral. So because that's at the end the biggest lever. And if you look what kind of fuels are out there, okay, today we're talking on biofuels and stuff like that, but this is limited. So roughly you could say that the fuel maritime industry would need probably 5 to 10% could be done with biofuels, even second generation. The rest need to be so-called e-fuels, so made out of hydrogen, and you produce the hydrogen with green energy. But to get a energy density, do you need, for example, there are fuels like a synthetic diesel made out of hydrogen, or methanol is another fuel. They have a energy density we need in the maritime industry for most applications. And then you need CO2. So you need just CO2. And the logic is you take CO2 out of the air, you burn it, and the same CO2 goes back into the air. And so you are carbon neutral. And the critical technology to make that happen, you need to take out the CO2 out of the air. And because we are really thinking more and more in ecosystems, and we saw that hydrogen production is already something from our power generation side, that basically this makes sense. So this is basically a next step, just from the perspective that this will be in the future needed to produce the amount of fuel. You need to take it out of the air. So maybe in the next years, we will have point sources like biological CO2 from cement industry, so unavoidable emissions. But this is, again, limited. And so in the future, that will be way. And that's the idea why we look into the technology. So to be honest, I mean, that's not in our case. In most cases today, that's not economically viable. But it's clear that's the key technology to make this all happen.
Sure. So it's safe to say that we're going to see this sort of research feeding back into maritime then?
For sure, because at the end, I would say it's maritime and aviation. They need fuels with high energy density, and fuels can handle, and they are carbon-based fuels. While maybe short sea shipping or trucks or other stuff might run with hydrogen directly. And these are, I would say that in most discussions you will hear, it's clear they will need carbon-based fuels, and therefore you see it's aviation maritime why we're so interested into that technology.
Okay. This question is for everyone. Drew, I'm going to go ahead and put you in the hot seat first, though. So ESG, sustainable practices, are not something you do once. It's something you do every day. How does your company, how does Sea Machines follow these practices?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I do my best to represent our founder, Michael Johnson, who speaks so passionately on this topic. And one of the reasons I joined the company was sort of the vision of being more efficient, and again, really taking ESG into our hearts and into everything that we do. So if we look at the way we're developing our technology, again, sustainability portion of it is front and center. So we're always looking for more efficiency, for fuel savings reduction. We're looking into how we can push the envelope in terms of technology to help our customers achieve those goals. And when we look internally, we run a test fleet of 4 vessels, and we've just implemented a system for more closely optimizing and tracking our fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. And we're constantly looking for ways we can, again, look inward and say, what can we do better as an organization running these vessels? We need the testing hours, but we also don't want to be a net negative on the environment. So we try to take it into practice, into really everything that we do. And it's part of the reason that we wanted to get a panel like this together to kind of share some of that experience and make contacts with some industry folks that have a similar passion for doing good in the ESG space.
Yeah. John, how does Fuel Tracks practice sustainable solutions? Could you talk on that a little bit?
Sure. So again, with precision monitoring, we're able to set benchmarks for CO2 and monitor efficacy of optimization efforts in real time. So our sensors hold the mirror to both our organization and to our clients regarding the efficacy of either our recommendations or some of the optimizations initiatives that they're employing. You know, the numbers don't lie, and embracing a culture of trusting those numbers, you know, good, bad, or ugly, and then using that information to drive change in behavior is something we really do well. And we facilitate those discussions, again, not only for ourselves, because we do have a consultancy line of operation that makes optimization recommendations to clients, but also for them. If they're going to onboard a new type of paint or anti-fouling technology or some type of a fuel additive, we'll hold that mirror to them with their raw fuel consumption and tell them, look, this is working or this is not working. And then they need to have the trust in that data to make the necessary change to reach the goals that they want to achieve for optimization and emissions reduction.
Okay. And Daniel, what about Rolls-Royce?
Yeah, I would really say it's our top priority for two reasons. And we had also a large discussion with our board on that. So it's clear we have a responsibility for society. So I could really say for us, and I agree with that, a lot of employees, if you want to hire today new employees, for them it's equally important that sustainability is a part of everything we do. And the rest, next thing is, we think it's a huge business opportunity. As a technology-driven company, I mean, 80%, there's a study out there, 80% of the CO2 emissions we emit globally can and will be reduced by new technology. Some are more newer, some already mature, needs more become economically viable. So that's why I say it's the golden age of engineering. This is a good mixture for a company. And what we have done, clearly, we have also for years, we target how much wastewater we produce. We now getting the next level of Germany and Europe. We have the Supplier Chain Act, so we really look now at the whole supply chain. What is the situation of labor there? And there's a lot of things, but maybe where it and maybe comes more prominent, I would say. So we made a clear commitment to become net zero 2050, and we commit to the 1.5 degree target. We have already published also now for power systems, so the section where marine sits, a target that will reduce the emissions of our product portfolio from 2019 to 2030 by 35%. And you can imagine still we live a lot of engines that produce CO2. And so that's a huge step. And but out of that, we invest now more than 500 million into new technologies like fuel cells, like battery containers. And then that's, my experience is, if you make that step and you start to measure your CO2 footprint, you get a very good tool to measure your progress and to evaluate, is this technology the right step? And we believe, and we see it, especially in marine, I would even say now a huge momentum. Interestingly, that it really kicked off from our perspective the last 2 years, really, that a lot of companies, customers engage with us, say, we need to look for concepts, what can we do? And I think we see, so that also brings us close that we're on the right track to say invest in new technologies, because we believe maybe in the past it was somehow said maritime is just conservative. But I think there's a huge momentum now. And I think that's the momentum we need to leverage altogether.
Okay. John, I'm going to throw this question to you. For, well, one reason you are with Fuel Tracks, but then I do have a question for all of you to follow. So given that Fuel Tracks operates across the global offshore energy sector, which geographic regions are most ready or the most challenged to apply sustainability solutions?
No, that's a really excellent question. And somebody that I have deep respect for, Heather, is somebody that you also know well, Paul Manzi at Crowley, because you had an article about him in the June issue of Marine Log, or he had comments in the June issue of Marine Log. Also, Paul, under Paul's leadership at Crowley, Crowley became an early adopter of our technology for the critical precision monitoring that serves as a foundation for their optimization program on their VLCCs. But his comment dealt with infrastructure readiness, and he talked about a current lack of infrastructure to introduce and maintain greener operations. And one of the examples that he cited was Crowley's efforts to install a charging station for an electric tug in San Diego. And I thought that was illustrative, because when we talk about supporting infrastructure required to enable operations of electric vessels, hydrogen, ammonia vessels, et cetera, we need to not just look at this through a European and US lens only, right? So at Fuel Tracks, we support upstream operations globally, which more often than not occur in very austere locations. So it works in San Diego or Seattle or Delaware or in the North Sea or in Norway might not yet be feasible in other regions. It's important for the industry to certainly demonstrate leadership in this regard, but we shouldn't lose sight of the realities of operating in some of these other challenging areas of the globe. So what can you do now? I think, before you look at trying to install charging stations in some of these places in sub-Saharan Africa or South America or Southeast Asia, you should look at layering existing technology, monitoring and augmentation solutions like Fuel Tracks or Sea Machines, some of the offerings that Rolls-Royce has for engine performance. These can be realistically layered on existing propulsion technology anywhere in the world today, and it doesn't require significant infrastructure change in the port in order to be realized and produce results. I think too often we jump right to the ideal end state. Of course, we all want carbon zero vessels as soon as possible, but we need to acknowledge the hard realities in the in between and consider technologies that are ready today. I think sometimes if your technology applies to diesel vessels in particular or conventional propulsion, the industry kind of overlooks you. They think, hey, we're not interested in that. We want to go hydrogen. I think we all need to stop and pause and recognize what works now and can help make the world a better place with what's available on the shelf while we are building out these more perfect solutions in parallel.
Okay. John, this question, again, like I said, is going to be for everyone, but let's start with you. Do you have any maybe case studies or testimonials that you can share with our audience?
Sure. So also, in that same edition of Marine Log, you mentioned Switzer and Crowley as positive examples of operators who engage in self-stewardship for the right reasons, not because they're being told to do it, because they recognize that it's important that they do it on their own. Another example of this is Tidewater, who is employed by Fuel Tracks to employ our expertise to monitor their fuel consumption at the enterprise level. And what we do for them is we apply observed best practices based on 18 years of doing vessel monitoring at the charter level for ExxonMobil and BP and some others. We've taken those best practices and we've applied them across the Tidewater fleet globally. And through this process, we've been able to save them significant amounts of CO2 or save them fuel, reduce their CO2, which equates to hundreds of cars removed from the road and thousands of hours of 737 flight time. That's how we report those metrics to Tidewater. And again, this is all with conventional propulsion technology, but it's based on our ability to provide a precision account of their engine burn in real time. And from there, we can make some recommendations on the behavioral change necessary to do things like better manage engine alignment and port, better manage engine alignment when you're inside the 500-meter zone, outside the 500-meter zone. Again, cutting down on fuel consumption with the existing propulsion technology that they have in their fleet, but still equating to significant fuel saved in the aggregate.
Okay. Daniel, how about you? Are there any specific case studies or testimonials that come to mind on this topic?
Yeah, maybe with 3 topics. I would refer also what John has said, so what can be done today. And forget also about it's also about emissions like NOx and PM. So, for example, you will find in San Francisco Bay, we equipped the ferries with highly efficient after-treatment systems. And yeah, they're running on diesel engines, but I think that's something, and again, I liked it what you said, John, should not forget what we can do today. Or another example is we developed a gas engine which has the same performance like a high-speed diesel engine, and we were able in a Dutch closed natural area, they're able to operate now with a ferry there. Would be the only way. So I think there's a lot still to do on that side. And maybe now a future-oriented testimonial would be again in Germany. There's a part of the harbor in Duisburg that wants to become climate neutral, and they have the challenge to provide shore power, for the vessels. And they have not enough energy. So we have now installed a microgrid with hydrogen there, so they can have renewable energy there. We store the energy in the battery, or we produce with electrolyzer hydrogen. If they need peak power, this system can produce the peak power, and even the heat is used for a nearby area for where people in the industrial is located. And then clearly, if there's hydrogen, next step would be also to run some vessels on hydrogen. And this is a project which is now about to start. So. But I think this is a very good example what could the future look like and how, let's say, things getting together, so in a kind of sectoral combination.
Okay, thank you. Drew, how about you? How about Sea Machines? Any testimonials or?
Sure. Yeah. On the Sea Machines side, one of the most compelling things we hear from customers is from some of the early adopters of our technology in the survey business. So if you imagine someone executing a maritime survey, they're basically plotting a grid and then executing a lawnmower pattern. Very repetitive, very tedious for the operator to do. Our system executes this completely autonomously, allowing the operator to focus on more value-added tasks, perhaps checking that the system, that the survey equipment is functioning properly and monitoring the mapping that's going on. And what we found is that this can yield some pretty compelling efficiency gains. So not only does that operator get, sort of this hands-off approach where they're able to focus on higher value-added tasks, but at the same time, from a sustainability point of view, the vessel is able to be much more efficient, and the grid pattern, the way it's executed autonomously, there's fewer needs for rework. So you don't need to run that pattern as many times, and you get much higher precision doing it with a system like we offer. So that's an example where perhaps in an unconventional way, to John's point, this stuff is available today, and maybe a survey is not the sexiest thing that comes to mind when you think about autonomy and sustainability, but the benefits are real, and that's why you see the technology being adapted in that sector the way we've seen it.
Okay, well, that wraps up the discussion portion of today's webcast. We did receive several questions from the Marine Log audience related to the talk today, so I'll go ahead and start with some of those. But as a quick reminder and also a correction on my end, the Ask a Question box is at the bottom of your screen, so please do that now, and if we have time, we will get to that question. So John, I am going to start with you. What are some ways that vessel owners can optimize existing propulsion technologies, like diesel, while we await the arrival of realistically scalable alternatives?
Great question, Heather. Again, I'm going to go back to that issue that I keep referencing because it's so germane to our discussion today, and that was your June issue of Marine Log. In there, you mentioned 38% of reduction in CO2 by 2050. Can be realized through the digitization of existing vessels and infrastructure alone. Of course, I would agree with that. I'd also say that a critical prereq to digitization is precision monitoring. Precision monitoring is woefully lacking in industry. But I agree that once you have a good account of your fuel consumption, there's much that can be done with existing propulsion technology while you're awaiting the arrival of the next generation items that we've talked about a lot here today. So as an example, we advise our clients, before you consider going electric, first make sure you're using the right mix of engines and generators across all your propulsion modes. That includes dynamic positioning and standby and transit to and from the rig, or even in port. And then set a standard for equalizing that behavior across your fleet, and then monitor your compliance, your crew compliance with those best practices in real time. From there, once you have that foundation, you can start layering on additional active optimization. In our case, we've got some proprietary throttle optimization features that can help the vessel find its most economic throttle position when it's in transit mode. And there's all sorts of other third-party solutions, again, hull coating, fuel additives, the Sea Machine's autonomous navigation system that can advise on optimal routes and things of that nature. You can start layering those things on top of that foundation of precision monitoring and then grade them on their efficacy. One thing that I do find really fascinating, though, and we've consistently observed this over 18 years all around the globe, is that once you start monitoring a vessel consumption, for whatever reason, its consumption drops, right? And I think there's the psychological aspect and the crew behavior aspect of once they know that they're being monitored with precision in real time, there's and this is natural, the human condition. They just take more care to make the right decisions when it comes to which engines they're going to use, when they're going to take an engine offline, what their configuration is going to be in certain propulsion modes. And then that's further amplified when you layer on top of it a set of expected behavior at the company level, and then start alerting to any deviations from that and taking corrective action as necessary. So to answer your question, there's lots you can do, but it really does start with true, accurate precision monitoring, which still remains pretty rare in industry. I think the majority of vessel owners are reliant on noon reports and data collected from suboptimal sensors. We're hoping to change that by advocating for a precision sensor-based approach.
Okay. Daniel, this question's for you. So Rolls-Royce is getting MTU into the business of not only building engines that will operate on hydrogen, but also of building hydrolyzers, sorry, I cannot say that word right now, that will be used to produce green hydrogen. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Hydrolyzer.
Exactly. So that's the logic. If you want to run an engine or more fuels on hydrogen, a lot of if you talk with customers, just imagine you have a tug or whatever, at least in a combination with hydrogen or even methanol, which would be synthetic fuel, where get the fuel. And that's clearly then when it comes with an electrolyzer, you produce it on site in the harbor, like I described with Anaport. And basically, we are already in that business of trying decentralized energy. And so it comes naturally that with that kind of approach, we are then able to offer a customer complete solution. And that's basically the logic behind it.
Okay. This question comes from Caterpillar, someone there. How are your customers measuring sustainability? Is it GHG reduction, CO2 footprint, other emissions, fuel saved? And if any of you want to go ahead and jump in, Drew, if you...
Sure, I'll jump in. In our case, it really depends on the customer and the nature of their operation. I think Daniel brought it up earlier that thankfully we have, and John as well, if you look at what FuelTrax does with sensors and what Daniel pointed to with things like NOx and SOx and particulate matter, different measures that are important to keep track of. So what is the vessel really emitting, and not just as a whole, but really down to a granular level so you can really attack the problem. I think also you see in certain segments, the importance of EEDI, EEXI, and CII, the carbon intensity. So looking at it from a true GHG reduction standpoint, there's a number of different metrics you can use. And for us, it's we try to, be germane and be able to sort of flex to whatever the customer needs, because each operation is going to be a little different. And us being more on the technology side, we're ultimately trying to figure out how can we contribute to to a potential solution. So really listening to our customers and understanding their operation, we start to sort of figure out what's needed for any given situation and then optimize towards that.
Sure. John,
I would add, I'd add too. That's really, really well said, Drew. And then taking it to the next level and understanding emissions profiles in different operating modes. And one of the things we invest a lot of time and energy for our clients is helping them to categorize their emissions profile in different modes. So take it from the charter's perspective. They're keen to understand how much did we emit inside the 500 meter zone for this particular offshore installation? How much did we emit in transit? How much did we emit when we were in port? And then, like Drew said, being able to tackle and make corrective action in that regard. We have an example where a charterer was able to, they had an established carbon cap at a certain site. They were actually able to add tonnage to their fleet. They were able to identify via fuel tracks that they had a high emitter in their fleet. And so they off-hired that vessel and were able to on-hire 2 more vessels, which in aggregate produced less than the vessel that they off-hired. So what it did was it added operational capability while still drawing down their overall emissions profile. And they were looking exclusively at emissions, again, inside the 500 meter zone of a particular asset. So once you can categorize by location and using geofencing and some other things, you're able to make better decisions with the information provided.
If I may add, so you have a response for sustainability strategy, and so I think would like to add, there's a second layer which comes now up, how, let's say, customers measure that. That's more on the corporate level. So clearly would say greenhouse gases on the top, but this gets then aggregated. So that there are standards out there where, for example, we as a supplier, we ask our supplier, what kind of measures do you have in place to make sure there's no child work? So there's a whole bunch, that's a topic on is getting a whole bunch of topic for specialists of their own. And that's what we see, those standards. So SPTI is something, or GHG protocol. So if somebody likes to go into that, that's really another level which is not now coming up. But at the end, it's like Drew and John said, at the end, it's about the performance of the real vessel, because that's the basic data which goes into that.
Okay. Where are we today as far as regulations go? As far as liability goes. So the question is, let me reread, where are regulations today as far as liability goes? I thought that was a really good question. I don't know if, John, you would like to jump in on that question?
Yeah, it obviously, depends on the geography, right? And where the vessel's operating in the world. There's, I mentioned earlier the example of West Coast port congestion and Ecozone compliance. The short answer is it all depends on where you are, where you're operating. Our clients that operate on the U.S. West Coast pay particular attention to their consumption and having an audit trail on their consumption based on the geography of where they're operating. Obviously, our clients in Europe are very attentive to EU MRV reporting schemes. But then, unfortunately, the majority of the world and the global commons is unmonitored and unregulated from certainly from a regulatory enforcement standpoint. And thankfully, our clients were increasingly seeing employ self-regulation that's either driven by a board, driven by shareholders, or just driven by the moral compass of the leadership of the organization to self-regulate and demonstrate transparency. We have one operator in particular, a bulk vessel owner. Again, this is an industry that's not necessarily known for being transparent, and he takes care to make his fuel consumption figures known in real time to anybody that wants to see his fuel consumption, fuel figures, and they employ some very aggressive optimization protocols on board to self-regulate their emissions profile, right? And I think as as time goes on, we'll see more and more operators and a new generation of marine professionals that follow suit.
Okay. Gentlemen, I have time for maybe one or two more questions here. John, this is geared right to you here. Any numbers you can share from FuelTrax on how companies that use the solution have decreased their emissions?
Absolutely. So, there are, again, lots of ways and lots of emissions optimization protocols that can be layered on board a vessel. But when they're using our technology, what we typically see is about a 10 to 20% reduction. That's just based on, we call that like the transparency, benefit. Once you apply the technology, the consumption just naturally drops. And really that can change based on the geography of where the vessel's operating. And then from there, when we apply our proprietary optimization protocols, we can get another 7 to 9% on throttle optimization. But I will say the majority of it, when you compare before and after to not just FuelTrax, but any precision monitoring transparency program, you're looking at a significant 20% drop in fuel consumption once you start seeing behavioral change amongst crew and vessel managers. But I do need to separate that from the proven efficiency that can be gained from our optimization protocols, which is right in that 7 to 9% range.
Okay. This is an interesting question that just popped up. What do you see as the main drivers for clients to be monitoring and reducing their emissions? Is it predominantly cost-driven or stakeholder supplier-driven? And whoever would like to jump in on that, go ahead.
I can maybe jump in from.
Sure, Daniel, go ahead.
So what we really see is a bit like also what John said, that's the companies itself. So more companies going for yearly CO2 emission disclosure. And this clearly sets up even climate targets, and this sets the pressure to do something. And also there's like an ecosystem. So large manufacturers say, I want, for example, carbon neutral transport because I need to meet my targets. So then the ship owner needs to do something. So that's a bit of ecosystem. And I would say a bit now what we will see in the EU, there will become very strict regulations. So up to that, what John has said, there will be now a taxation on fuel. There will be a fuel quota, but this, I would say, I see it only in Europe at the moment. But to sum up, I see the strongest driver at the moment are these disclosure and transparency topics, because that enforces that you do something.
Okay. I said two questions, but I'm going to ask one more. We've got a little bit more time than I thought. Do you see a difference in interest or adoption of automation in different market sectors? Drew, if you wouldn't mind answering that first.
Sure. Yeah, I would say we do. There are definitely certain sectors and certain applications that lend themselves more to technology like automation and autonomy. Again, I go back to things that are a bit more predictable by nature, lend themselves to more optimization. So if you look at shipping, if you're looking at passenger vessel ferry routes, if you're looking at things like survey, certainly defense applications and patrol applications are well suited to this as well. And there's more of a, let's say, an appetite and willingness to do something as a bit of an early adopter or even a fast follower in certain sectors. So that's typically what we see and where a lot of our commercial products and commercial success has been in those particular sectors.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything to add to that before I let you go?
I just would amplify that it's, sure. Autonomy, digitization in general, and an appetite for new technology. We absolutely see, upstream energy as being very hungry for this, right? So when for a company like FuelTrax, when we look at all sectors, we definitely see the energy sector as being most interested in new technology and onboarding, digitization, monitoring, efficiency programs. I would predict that, autonomous navigation or assisted navigation will arrive there before it will arrive in some of the more traditional marine sectors, right? I think that's just a technology comfortable subsector of the industry.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I want to thank you, Daniel, Drew, and John. And to the audience, we're so glad that you joined us today on this important topic in sustainability and maritime. If we did not get to your question today, I will send your question to the panelists and they will get in touch with you. Tune in again for more webinars coming your way. And also, please stick around at the end of this to fill out a brief survey. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and see you next time.